turning your purpose into profit can be a cumbersome endeavor without a shadow of a doubt. I know when I set out to turn my purpose into a company, I had no idea where to start. That's why I actually hired a coach to help me along the way. In this episode, we help a former client of mine and all around incredible human, Sean, to help him identify what is of greatest importance to him personally and what the value set is for a corporate coaching program that he wanted to start. Now, you'll find out early on that he's in a bit of a transition, as we all are, especially if you are coming from a corporate world and then you want to step out into the consulting or coaching world. Wherever you are in your life, there's always this process of transformation. And sometimes we just need a guide, some facilitation along the way. And that's what we do for Sean in today's episode. We help him identify the very clear values that he brings to the table, what the value is of that for those who he is serving, and why it's important to him. Why this is actually important to me too is because when we realize that we have something of incredible value that is actually deep-seated purpose, we can not only achieve the success we want, but we actually get to achieve the purpose we are seeking along the way. That's the nuance. That's the deliciousness, what I like to call the soul-quenching satisfaction. And you'll find out how I guide Sean to help him identify that for himself. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to tell you about the live event we have coming up for the Brotherhood. If you are joining the Brotherhood, you will get access to a 2.5-day immersive, what I call a rite of passage. This is an initiatory rite of passage that all men need to experience if they expect to break through all of the mindset blocks that stop them from achieving the success and fulfillment they crave. If you are seeking more fulfillment, more depth, more meaning and purpose in life, this is absolutely the Brotherhood and the event for you. The next live event is going to be July 7th through the 9th. So if you are thinking about joining the Brotherhood, be sure to click the link in the description and register with access in the Brotherhood. You will not only get all of the support, the accountability, the challenge for you to break through and get the results you're looking for in life, along with 90 days of personalized coaching. You will get access to our 2.5-day immersive experience that will absolutely transform your life. You will be the man you want to be when you get through this event. And I know you will live the life you love. One more thing I want to dive in. If you found this information highly valuable, which I know it's been incredibly valuable for so many of the guys that have reached out to me, please consider sharing this with other men. In fact, I would be honored if you could even go online and give us a 5-star review, because it helps more men find this information. It is our mission to help men break through the mindset blocks that stop them so that they can live the life they love. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy today's episode. What is up, beautiful humans? This is Dr. Dave Cahotis. I am on a mission to forge strong, heart-centered, and purpose-driven men. And this podcast is here to help you stop managing your problems and start breaking free of stress, limiting beliefs, and excuses that stop you from executing at your fullest potential, living with passion, and being the man you want to be. So let's go. John, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, Dr. Dave?
Not much, man. I'm really glad we got on a chat today. I know you had mentioned that you're in a bit of a transition in life, and you reached out, was like, "Hey, wanted to work through some stuff," and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity for you and for the listeners of the podcast to work through some things. And I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited to be of support. So, what do you got going on? Let's start there.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, I definitely have a couple of things that are all like a very everything everywhere all at once kind of moment where I currently just moved into an apartment from my house because I am getting divorced. And so my wife and I are going to be selling the house. We got separated and she moved out about a year ago.
Yeah.
But we are also still trying to maintain a friendship. So, I mean, which is actually, has certainly had its ups and downs, and is currently in an up phase where we're definitely at least team house and team sell the house, which is great.
Yeah.
I also just lost my job, so I am currently in transition there while I'm trying to figure out exactly what I want to do next. I've primarily worked in training, corporate training, learning and development in, for the better part of the last 10 or 15 years. So I am trying to make a decision really around what I want to continue to pursue there. And I've definitely been much more of the mindset of really starting to or potentially pursuing going back to school for different things,
Yeah.
and really kind of harkening back to when we were working together, and in one of our last sessions we were kind of talking about, or I was still in a place of like, what's my purpose?
Yeah.
And I mean, still resonates with me around just how I kept thinking that it was going to be something that was big, like something where I was just like, oh, I'm going to have like some like massive, like something would just fire off in my head, and I'd be like, oh, this is how I'm going to change the world with this big idea, and I have big purpose. And remembering that I just landed on just like, as a purpose, knowing that in every interaction with someone, that I always make sure that they just feel seen and heard, and that no one ever feels alone.
Yes.
And that's been something that, has been overriding every kind of conversation that I have with new people that I meet, and, letting them know that that's just pretty much kind of how I engage the world around me today. And it's like, and I this weekend, or yesterday was yesterday was my birthday, and I
Well, happy
spent
birthday.
thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, which I've been joking about. So I turned 42, which, if you know Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at all, that 42 is, in the book, is the answer, that their like supercomputer like comes up with the answer to the world, but the answer is 42, but it
Perfect.
can't come up, with the question. So this is going to be just my year of questions.
Perfect. I love that, man. I love that. I think
um,
that, oh, go ahead.
but no, I was just going to say, like, so this weekend I went out to a dance festival called Seismic, and I've been going out to just more and more events that are with a lot of people, and like I'm going to a burn this next weekend, and it's amazing how, I mean, I'm just continuing to draw people around me that are, you know, people who are really looking for authenticity, and are looking for, people to support them and listen, and like just I'm kind of finding a lot of people who feel a little lost, and aren't used to somebody who can have a conversation with them from a place of like, I just want to be in this space with you, and
Yeah.
I don't want anything from.
Yeah.
And it's you know it's been in those conversations that I've like started to kind of really feel much more attached to the idea, or driven toward the idea of getting into some type um of support. So whether it's, going back to school potentially for, psychology or social work, or getting into things that are more along the lines of like somatic or LMT, or, something that is much more driven toward like the service orientation that I just have,
Yeah.
and that I find really fulfilling. So I mean, that's kind of been a bigger thing that I've been thinking about lately, is that career change towards something more fulfilling is kind of, I'm at a really good place to do that, and to really pivot and find something new. So that's been
Yeah.
certainly at the forefront of my mind.
That's beautiful, man. I mean, it sounds like you're in a big transition in a number of ways. It's amazing that how the universe provides when you are calling in change. It will throw you all a big bone sometimes. And obviously you're going through the divorce. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's one of those things that you and I have talked about. It's sometimes it's healthier to find yourself, to be that authentic expression of who you are as whoever that thing is, and a lot of people put an idea of divorce in the bad category, but in reality, it just is. There is just isness around it, and you're stepping into your fullest expression of self. And I think that's beautiful, man. And yeah, again, with the job, I know big layoffs in corporate tech right now. It's just a few of my friends even got laid off, so I feel that. But it sounds like let's do this. Let's focus on even just the career. I know you and I were chatting about purpose the last time we were chatting, and you were able to hone in on bringing that sense of connection to people, and just knowing that there's deep meaning in that. And every day you wake up, there's meaning in your life that you get to do. Like, that's the gig, right? That's the meaning. It's like, it doesn't have to be some, massive, like, nonprofit organization that saves all the whales or the babies. It's like, it can literally be like a conversation. And, which kind of begs the question of, like, which is the next step, which is always a lot of people, like, in a transition, what they know. And you're mentioning school, right? It's like, what is like, well, what if I go back to school and then I'll have the authority to speak on this? But in reality, you actually already have it. And it's just
Yeah,
helping
which
you, yeah, just helping you set it up. Go ahead.
yeah, that's I mean, kind of been like the other running joke is that because I mean, obviously, I mean, just I think as with anyone, especially when potentially moving into any type of a like a mental health space or anything that is going to be about supporting others, that we primarily, I mean, I don't think I'm alone in this, that most people tend toward wanting to have some level of authority to be able to kind of move past the imposter syndrome of like, how do I like have anything to offer? How do I have a voice if like I don't have that diploma or piece of paper to like validate what it is? And I actually had an incredible conversation with a friend, and he was just like, you know, that if you had imposter syndrome, you wouldn't be worried about it, right? I was like, yeah, no, I get it. It's almost as like, I mean, being worried about being an imposter is like means that I'm definitely not along the lines of some like narcissist asshole who's like, no, I'm just gonna push through this and nobody will care and I can just be a fake and everybody will like everyone will listen to me and it won't matter. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
I'm so concerned about being authentic that I can't possibly be an imposter. It's like,
Yeah. And it's important to note that, like, authenticity is just living in integrity with the self, right? Like,
right.
it's living in integrity with who you are and how you want to express in the world. And it doesn't mean that you need a piece of paper in the world. I will also add this. There's two ways to create validation, and that's simply, of course, like some external validation, like a piece of paper, like you've earned the certificate of being doctor of this, or it's literally just living your story. If you live your story, if you go through a struggle and you find a bridge that got you across into the land of plenty, right? Into that area of solution, you now have the story. And so your story is transformational just by you speaking it. And you came from, obviously, corporate background in corporate training and dev, and development. So you have an understanding of corporations. You have an understanding of what that looks like on the inside. And emotional intelligence is very important nowadays. You don't. Here's the thing too: is with the emotional intelligence. I'm just going to tell you this. Like, you have the background. Knowing what you know, and you and I have worked together quite a bit, doing some deep inner work. Your stuff, like, you do, like, whether you know it or not, you already know it. It's now then just identifying, okay, well, what does that look like? How does that show up? How am I going to express that? And so here's a cool thing, man. It's like, let's kind of play a game. Like, I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and then you can kind of like tease this out, because from there you'll be able to create an easy offering and then maybe bring that back into the world. One of the things that's really big in corporate world right now is emotional intelligence. It is massive. Like, it is, I know IBM just put up an ad. A friend of mine saw it and he said, dude, they're paying 12K to somebody to come on and give a keynote on emotional intelligence. I was like, yeah, that's real, man. That's real right now. And so there's a lot of money to be had relative to emotional intelligence. So you can create a good living out of it. This is what's really fun about it, is if you had to think about what really pissed you off, right? Like, without going into the emotional charge and like diving too far deep into that, what really pissed you off about corporate culture and how people relate, how they connect?
I mean, like the first thing that kind of pops into my head is just kind of the forced nature of so much of it.
Yeah.
Like, and like the just and the forced sense of like, well, if we call it a community or if we call each other meta mates, if we do, it's like, and it's just like, ugh. I mean, like, there was just so much of it that felt disingenuous
Yeah.
and phony
Yeah.
and, and I mean, not, I mean, to degrees, right? I mean, like, I think that there was a lot of great stuff that was within, like, I mean, certainly the LGBT community at, Meta, I think was really genuine in the work that they did. And I mean, I felt lucky to be able to help with pieces of that at times when I had been there. And like, I
Yep.
think that absolutely are, clubs and communities that are incredible there. But for the most part, as like an overriding kind of climate, it feels very forced. And
Yeah.
so I think that more could be done in terms of being able to honestly engage each other,
Yeah.
and to not just like, you create like that name metamate still just kills me that you would call your coworkers that. I was like, well, I can tell you I'm never doing that because that feels so fake to me. And it's like, but then on like my immediate team, like I built a relationship with them pretty quickly, but that was literally because I was willing to be 100% vulnerable with where I was at. Like I wasn't, I mean, that's who I am in general these days. It's like, I mean, once it's like, if I'm building a relationship with people and our strength in relationship will allow for us to better understand one another in order to better, complete work and to better be able to understand each other.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I've just become an open book. So it's like I, being able to talk about, the struggles that I've been through, the changes that I'm going through, and not hold any of it back. Like, I mean, I went on a work trip and I was literally, talking to my like we were out at it was a late night and we ended up going out to like a jazz club with a couple of people who all decided to stay out late and go out. And it's like I'm literally at a table with, three women who I had previously never met in person before, literally crying and telling my story, but smiling about how lucky I am for all the change that's happening. And they're all just like, who the fuck is this person? Who talks like this? And I'm like, I do, because I don't know another way to be anymore.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, literally, and then it's like I have one of them telling me about how it's like, I was talking about how, you know, I'm an alcoholic and I'm working through that. And, it's because because I wasn't drinking. They were just like, how are you not drinking? Like, is it okay to ask? And I was like, I'm not drinking because I'm an alcoholic. And then she like kind of pulls me aside and she's like, so my sister. And I'm like, this is why I talk like I do, because now you
Yeah.
feel like you have the ability to do that. Like you
Yes.
have the ability to let that go and to not hold it on and know you're not alone. Like,
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. And obviously you know, like you don't need a piece of paper on the wall to know that you can create that environment for an individual for them to feel safe, so secure that they can express whatever's on their heart, whether that's obviously their sister is going through an issue. I'll give an example. I was at deer, we'll call it deer camp, right? I was like in the middle of Texas, and you can imagine the type of men that were there, coming in from East Texas, and I just held space and I just shared my experience very vulnerably. And one guy started opening up, and he had gone through a very similar experience, and all of a sudden, like one by one, these very hard Central Texas men started opening up, and it's amazing what you can create, the authenticity you can create through just holding space. So I love that. All right, so one of the things that pissed you off, right, is like how inauthentic a corporate sense can be, and how corporate engagement, because obviously a lot of people are talking about community and we and like togetherness and inclusivity, and like these are important concepts, but it can come off as like not even drab, but like just so like just bad. It just comes off super bad. So,
it just,
so
I mean, it seems like it's something that's just got thrown in front of a focus group and everybody's like, oh, yeah, no, that sounds great. It's like,
good idea. Yeah, like
it's
thumbs
like,
up. Good
boo.
idea. Let's tell all the people to call each other metamates, right? So walk me through, obviously, like outside of the emotional charge, you already mentioned it a couple times, but what are the main values that are really important for you in that? So, obviously there was the sense of inauthenticity. Obviously, we know authenticity is important, but what is the value there? What is like the true, like, if you took the emotional charge out of, the fakeness of it, what would be there? What's that value?
I'd be integrity
Integrity. Yeah.
as like the main one. I mean, like, yeah, integrity, authenticity, and vulnerability, curiosity. I mean, there are like a handful that I kind of that are a part of just how I think of my way of being that are so important to me around how I try to present myself around when I'm living in my integrity. There's like a handful of things that I think that I am when I am my best self in terms
Yeah.
of like who I bring to the world and who I present as self.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when it was truly me at my core. So it's like, and I feel as though I'm pretty good at recognizing when other people are not doing that.
Yeah.
So it's like it's something that I think that I certainly like to think about myself that, I role model what it looks like to not have to wear masks anymore, not have to hide pieces of who I am, and truly live that integral life of when, what I'm saying is truly how I feel, is truly who I am. And
Yeah.
it's like those when those three can be in line, I think that that's truly when I know personally it's like those are the people that I'm drawn to. Like when I can sense that, the person that they are is truly the person they're presenting, are truly the words they're speaking.
Yes.
And and it's not easy. And I mean, it's certainly, it's like I'm not in any way claiming that I'm perfect with it, but I know that it's something that is my like kind of daily goal, is
Yeah.
to ensure like that's happening. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I think, probably like my highest value right now in terms of the one that I really kind of focus in on, to really just kind of be as comfortable as I can in my own skin and really let people see me.
Yeah, no, I love that. And obviously integrity is one of the main and most impactful things as far as values are concerned, for our company as well. It's integrity is one of the highest, of the five. We have five. We have responsibility, which is taking ultimate responsibility for your shit, right? It's like
Mhm.
owning your shit, how you experience the world. If somebody said something and you get offended, that's your shit. That's one of the things I always say. Discipline is another one, right? Discipline is the highest form of self-love, is the way I like to describe it. When we have discipline and we're willing to go after something and we show up and we do the work, and because again, it requires work. It doesn't mean that it has to be hard work and we need to be laboring all the time, but rather it does require work. The other two, other than integrity, are compassion. That's a very, very high value for me. And compassion is not empathy in the sense that we fall into the snake pit with our friend and go, oh, like if our friend's an alcoholic, I'm not going to go have a drink with that person. I'm going to stand outside of, the snake pit, and I'm going to throw him a rope and be like, you need to climb up. Let's go. And it's not also not sympathy, being like, oh, well, that's nice, like almost like pushing an arm's length
Yeah.
away. The last one being, and you already hit it, which is interesting. It's like, our one of our values is courage, and courage to have vulnerability. I mean, that's so important into the overall being of self. But I love that what you said about integrity, which is, what we call be your word. It's like what you say, what you feel is who you are. So walk me through, what does that look like? If you were in a group of people and you were leading them, through a program or through like an exercise, how would you ensure that integrity was a major component to that lesson?
I think that it would start with, I'm leading by example. So whatever was going on within it, it would start from a place of being vulnerable and offering up who I am. I mean, and
Yeah.
also sharing an example of like what what I would be like when I wasn't living in my integrity. So to kind of give an example of what that looks like, because I mean, which is really easy to do. I mean, I very often used to want to present myself and, kind of put on the mask of a person that I know people like. It's like,
Yeah.
somebody the I mean, we always used to kind of joke about it, where it was just like, I mean, if it on a given night, it's like, oh, the Sean show's here, where it's like very literally, it was, I was putting on this super extroverted kind of like fun life of the party character that, sure, I mean, was often a lot of fun and most people like really enjoyed. But it's like, I mean, I would leave interactions like that just being like, what the fuck was that? Like, why did I mean, it's like, I don't even know who that person is. Like,
Yeah.
how is there a chance that like anybody really got to know who I am? This like weird version of me where it's like I didn't offer up any personal information. I didn't seek to really, get to know them. It was more of just like this cookie cutter patterned type person that could have been anyone. That's like, sure, is entertaining, but like there's no depth. It's super surface level, and it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And so to go from that into now spending a lot of time, like I very, very much do a lot more listening. I do a lot more asking questions. I really want, or I really do spend time getting to know people in ways that I didn't used to. Like because I mean, it wasn't that I didn't care. It's that I'd be afraid of like, well, if I start to get to know this person and they get comfortable, then they're going to start asking me questions, and then I'm going to have to tell them who I am. But I don't even know who I am, so I don't want them to do that. So it became something where, I mean, I've recognized that my ability to be vulnerable truly is that kind of a superpower now, because there's no more hiding. Like there's nothing that is behind the curtain that's like, oh, I need to like, I can't let somebody know about that. It's like, why? It
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah.
It's a part of me. I mean, it's not to the point of just like, hi, let's sit down and let me give you all my trauma. It's like, no, I'm not an asshole. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
mean, it's like, but if we're talking about something where it's like I have an experience around that, I want to know more about theirs. And then, if it makes sense, or just, I mean, certainly, and again, not in like any like, one-upmanship way, or it's just like, hey, it's like, that happened to me too. Here's my version of it. No, it's like, I know what that is because I've been through it. And I'd like,
Yeah.
so I'd love to share more about that if you'd like to hear it. It's so much more about like how I engage with people just in general, doing it in a way that is vulnerable and honest, and letting people know that like, I guess the perfect example of like the best compliment that I've ever received, and I've heard it a couple of times, is just the, Sean, I feel safe when I'm around you. Like I can say anything and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if there's anything that makes me feel as though I have more purpose or am more fulfilled than
Yeah.
hearing someone. So
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. I think that's an incredible compliment, and I've received that compliment before, and it's very near and dear to my heart as well. And I know that when the deeper you go within yourself, and we've already talked about this, which is connection. True connection is just intimacy of the self. It's knowing that you feel safe enough and courageous enough to see all the shit you've been running from, to process that, to move that, to then take the emotional charge out of the wound, right? Like the wound could have been, maybe your dad said something when you were 5 and you're like, oh, and like it hit your heart. And it's like, oh, you kind of feel that. And then when you go deep within, that's why courage and compassion are so vital to anyone's well being. You then become a beacon of light for another, for them to rise up, for them to heal. And the process will continue. And that's what's so cool about a lot of this work. And you're describing is just creating a safe space for individuals. And so, like, here's the cool thing, man. Like, you could literally walk back into Meta or Indeed or one of these big tech companies, and you could run an emotional intelligence program like today. And like, you don't even call it emotional intelligence, you can call it whatever you want, but like, like corporate vulnerability or something along those lines. That's the beauty, because you already understand, like, it starts with an understanding of safety, creating safe structures in a container. That's that masculine structure. Those are the things that we've talked about before, which is, okay, maybe there's 4 walls around us. Maybe we're going to close the doors. Maybe we're going to put everybody in a circle instead of everybody facing me in the front, so that everybody's like, kind of on the inside of this container, and everybody is held. And so, I always say, what you see here, what you say here stays here when you leave here, so that there's an understanding of like, listen, we're all human, we all feel, and we're gonna go and we're gonna do some deep shit, and we're gonna feel some feels today. And that's why I love working with men, dude, because it's so important. And I am a man, and I come from a very masculine background of the army, and I was a veteran. And you go to war and you come back, you build a company, and then you think like, I'm gonna take on the world, like I got all these check boxes, got my doctorate, got all these, like, house, kids, car, and then I'm like, why am I fucking miserable? Oh, all of a sudden you're like, I am, what is up? And it was just it. It was just like what you just described, which is I was so inauthentic. I didn't even know who I was. I was putting on a mask. And it wasn't even a mask. It was like mask of a mask of a mask,
oh
right? It was like layers of these masks. And then you get down to that original one, and it's like terrifying when you finally pull it off and you're like, oh my God, I am worthy
yeah.
underneath all this.
Well, and that was, I mean, that I think too was like one of the harder pieces of it, because it's like, or at least in my case, I mean, all of that was there to try and to, in the effort to protect kind of the soft underbelly of all of kind of the negative things that I didn't want to look at too. So it
Yeah.
was just, I mean, recognizing it's just like, oh wait, no, I actually am really insecure about some things, but I don't want to admit it to myself. But if I have that
Yes.
mask on, I don't have to be that person. Or
Yes.
recognizing that I actually am putting myself into like a victim martyr role because it allows for me to be manipulative without feeling like I am. And it's
Yes.
like all of those like really kind of like gross controlling and negative traits of mine that I was like, I'm like, but I'm not any of those things. Let me keep this mask on, because if I take the mask
Yeah.
off, I actually have to look at those and recognize and own and acknowledge that it's like, nope, I'm actually all of that. I'm all of
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like that's when, I mean, certainly over like the last year, that's kind of been a big part of, I mean, which I mean, I would say falls into like the shadow work of like, oh no, I'm actually all of the evil that's in me too, and all
Yes.
of the bad things that have happened. And like if I'm not accepting of those pieces of them, then it's like I'm doomed to repeat them, and they're just going to be parts of me that I
Absolutely.
never address. Yeah, that was like a huge moment for me though, in like recognizing it's just like, yep, that is all true as well. And
Yeah.
like being able to accept those pieces of me and then bring them into the conversations and relationships that I've had where I've been that person, and recognizing that it's I can't change anything that has happened, but as a part of a living amends,
Yeah.
being the person who can actually call myself out when I start to slip into that,
Yeah.
knowing that's a
Yeah.
and being able to recognize those like all the places where it would come up where I wouldn't even be aware of it in the past.
Yeah.
And when somebody would point it out to me, and just in general, like that's been another just major change, is like, and that was something that was like a huge flaw of mine, was like around the kind of controlling aspect of things, was that I wanted to be right. Like I thought that being right was important.
Yeah. Because
And
it kept you safe.
of course it did. Like that was the
Yeah.
one. I mean, and that goes back to like the other like super huge thing of just like, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy?
Yeah.
As like I mean, because it's like, how is right making me happy? Well,
Right.
right's making me happy now because right's making me feel in control. How is control making me
Yeah.
feel? It's making me feel safe. Well, why is that making me feel safe?
Yeah.
Why am I unsafe if I'm being honest and I'm being myself? What is wrong with that? And
Yeah.
taking a look at that and being able to follow that kind of breadcrumb trail of like where my emotions are, and then finally getting to a place of just like, oh, well, okay, like almost all of this goes back to a point of like, if I actually have to sit in my emotions, even if I don't know what they are or I don't know how to name them, but I have to sit with them and I have to like feel them. I'm afraid of that. And if I'm in control, or if I'm angry, which is an emotion I know, and I can just bottle everything there, then I don't have to know who I am, and I can just kind of continue to do what works. No one has to know me. I don't have to know myself, and I'm safe. And
Yes.
it's like, I look back on that kind of thinking, and it is so sad to me that I thought that for so long. Yet I still have compassion for myself because I was literally doing my best. If I could have done better, I would have that.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, like the difference now, and I love this conversation around like that one, because it's like the idea that anyone is on purpose doing their worst is insane. Like I truly genuinely believe from the bottom of my heart that every human is absolutely doing their best, and if they could do better they would. So that is that moment of compassion of like, can you imagine the pain that that person is in to be behaving that way?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
100%.
and like my heart goes out to those people, like, and also having the self compassion in those moments too, where it's like when I look back on something that I did and I'm just like, how could I be that way? And I'm like, my guy, if you could have done better, you would have. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like,
Yeah.
what did you learn? What, like, it's like, there are no mistakes, only lessons, and you're doomed to repeat the lesson until you learn it. So it's like, what am I now? It's like when I get overwhelmed by emotion or I don't know what I'm feeling, and I'm just like, all right, well, motherfucker, we'll sit in it because you need to just feel it now. Your
Yep.
body's trying to tell you something. So listen.
Yep.
And it's like when I can be in those moments and then I can feel that. And it's like, can't imagine ever going back to
Yeah.
not have to be the way. It's like, man, it's like, what, like, is my body scared? Is like, am I fearful of something? Am I afraid
Yeah.
I'm going to lose something? Am I afraid that like I'm not good enough? Am I afraid that like, whatever is coming up, or is it something that it's like I'm overwhelmed by something that's really happy, but I don't know what it is yet because I haven't allowed myself to feel all the happy emotions too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
Now
it's
here's the
like
cool
it's not.
thing. You've crossed the bridge, right? Like we'll just say it that way. Like you've crossed the bridge from being who you were, the guy that was wearing the masks, the show up Sean, like the guy that was like, "Hey, I'm the life of the party," but deep down you were like, "I don't even know who the fuck I am," to now you're able to express yourself as this authentic, vulnerable individual, and in doing so you create safe space, you create both, you actually are living your purpose. That's the beauty about it. That's the original conversation we had around purpose. Now here's the super fun, the really fun question that I want to ask you. Like when you were on your path from the guy you were to the guy you are today, what were the main things that really stuck out to you? I know you obviously went through some of the work with me with some somatics, some obviously some breath work, but then there was more to that. Obviously there was like some deep dive in there, but what were the main things that stuck out to you along the way? Like if there was like a boat, right, to get you across a waterway, what were those bridges?
I mean, I went through several different trainings and kind of workshops and stuff that were leadership based, but were basically kind of experiential, like Gestalt level kind of stuff, where it was just like, okay, we are going to look deep into the heart of who you are and your trauma, which I mean,
Yeah.
it was kind of like a different methodology to getting to what somatics was doing. Like it was doing it more on the straight up kind of mental and emotional levels,
Yeah,
more
top
along
down versus
top
bottom up.
down. So, yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, I kind of was like sandwiching all my trauma until I just like finally popped it out of the sandwich, like
Yeah, yeah.
until I could really look at it. But I mean, being able to, it was honestly more so than anything else, it was a willingness to look at my ugly parts. It was a
Yeah.
willingness and look at it with like, go into it. It's almost just like, if you're scared, do it scared. Fuck it. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at a place of emotional and mental, kind of, and spiritual for sure, kind of rock bottom of
Yep.
like, I mean, I was just like, help. Like it was literally the let me put up the white flag because I have to surrender because what I'm doing isn't working. What I'm doing isn't
Yes.
allowing me to act. It isn't allowing me to certainly love myself at all because I still wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even like myself. So it was like getting to a place of just really raising my hand, asking for help, and then being willing to just do anything. Like, I mean, whether it was saying yes to doing the somatic breath work with you, whether it was saying yes to being really uncomfortable in big groups of strangers and just like accepting that it's just like, okay, like, I mean, I need to be able to express myself as unabashedly and vulnerably as possible if I want this to work. Like if I want,
Yes.
I want there to be change, because all I have done is run a game of let me show you who I'll let you see, because I think that that lets me be in control, versus I love myself so much I'm going to show you who I am and I don't care if you love him or not. Like that's a major
Yeah.
difference, like in terms of
Yeah.
what that is, where it's like I don't need external validation in order to have the love that I have for myself. It's like now it's like I love myself so much that everyone else is lucky to get my overflow. Like it's
Yeah.
just a totally different way of looking at all of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's like, and what's amazing, it's like the best part about it too is that I have way fewer friends because you'd be shocked at how many people don't like to talk at this level about things because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it can be, for the people who aren't there yet, it's exhausting. Like they're like,
Yeah.
well, do we have to talk about our feelings all the time, or like why we think things or why we feel things? And I'm like, you don't. I do, because I really enjoy doing it. And I love knowing more about the people around me. And I love letting people see who I am. And that's like a complete paradigm shift for people. And when they are not willing or able to do that, it is like, it's almost like it is frightening to be around a person who wants to like actually have conversations at that level, because
Yeah.
the expectation is that you're going to be in your integrity, and they're like, ooh, but I don't want to be there. Like, there's a lot of scary
Yeah.
shit in there. It's like, that's nice for you. And I'm like, I think it's great for me. And
Yeah.
I also don't expect it of anyone.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
except for the people that I truly keep close to me, which is why it's like, I have like a handful of people that I really spend my time with now. And my abilities to be this way are things that, they look at as like it's something they want to be able to be that emotionally and spiritually free, to be able to express themselves in
Yeah.
ways that I can. And they do a
Yeah.
great job of it, but it's like that's the thing that is like really attracting them to me, in terms of like, it's not like the over the top charisma of just like some asshole who can like, be the life of the party. It's the person who has the most life in them and shows
Yeah.
it. Right? It's like
Absolutely.
it's a very different kind of way of looking at it now. So yeah, it's been a lot of that, being willing to look at all of the dark stuff, being willing to accept and integrate all of that, and not just look at it as like, oh, I just need to let go of it. It's just like, yeah, that happened, and like I don't have to feel bad about it anymore because it's in the past, and just let it go. It's like, okay, well, don't hold on to it, but it's more of integration than it is like push away. It's like,
Yeah.
which I always find really interesting when I meet people who are just like, oh yeah, no, I've worked through my trauma and it's all gone now. And I'm like, is it? Is it gone? Okay. Like that's a way of looking at it. I mean, if we're playing a semantics game, but it's like in general, it's like I look at that, it's like, no, terrible things happened. And like because of those things, I know much more about myself and my way of being. And I don't ever want to push them away and make them go away. And
Yeah.
it's almost like it's like the, what we resist persists kind of mentality of just like,
Hmm.
if I'm pretending things didn't happen, that's the only thing I'm thinking about.
Hmm.
Like, doesn't go away like that. Like it's more of like, even in positions where I truly was like a victim, it's like, okay, well, that was a thing that did happen, and I need to
Yeah.
understand, what that meant to me, and really what I can learn from those things as best I can. And then also, how can I use what those feelings were or what that experience was so that I can be of service to others? And I can't
Yes.
do that if I push those things away.
Yeah, no, what you're describing is exactly obviously what we do at the Unbreakable Man as well. But what is really poignant about this, and this is why I'm asking you, and you've already said some like really, really good things, and this is like kind of food for thought, and also like what to bring forward as you
Yeah.
step from this transition of what you were doing into what you want to bring into the world, which is knowing who you were, right? Like knowing the masks, knowing what the mindsets were, what the and even what the cost of that is, right? Like if you had to think about what's the cost of you living that inauthentic life, right? And this is more rhetorical, but we'll come back to that, to now you are living this authentic, expressive, free, vulnerable lifestyle where you don't have to fucking carry that shit anymore. You're just like, oh God, it's so light. And I can even feel it even when I'm chatting with you. Like, even when you and I first started, I could, again, I'm very empathetic and I guide people along their path, and I feel all of their feels, and I know where I can get them is just getting them across this bridge. And I use somatic release breath work, and I use other modalities, conceptual, and helping people kind of articulate, okay, well, what was the experience there? And it sounds like, and I know you also went to another training other than working with me one on one, but it sounds like you got a lot of really good top down work as well of helping you understanding and look at all the dark parts of like, hey, this happened to me. Okay, this happened. Ah, shit. Okay, this happened. All right. Oof. Like kind of feel the feels there, and able to help you work through that. Now, again, why I was bringing this up is if you lay it out, if you had to think about like the five things, like five, like almost like literally like five frameworks, or even three, even have like just like, but let's stick with the five. Like, what are like the five things? If I come into your container, like let's say you're teaching a class, and I
Mhm.
walk into the room, and what are the five things you're going to walk me through that gets me from living a life of living with a mask
Mhm.
to living this expressive, authentic lifestyle? What are the five things that I need to step across that bridge?
You need to be able to surrender,
Surrender. Yeah, yeah.
like in the sense of like kind of what we were just talking about, where it's like you can't, not in the sense of give up, in the sense of stop
Yeah.
stop pushing everything out.
Just
Like
let
literally,
go.
it's an allowance. It's an
Yeah, yeah.
allowance of self. It's an allowance of external. It's more almost along the lines of like the way that. I forget which philosopher has like a quote on it, but also, or like Bruce Lee, where he's talking about like be like water, like literally just
Yeah.
you are going to be the form of the container. Like
Yeah.
you don't have stop trying to control everything that's
Yeah. Yeah.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. So yeah, I mean, it's along those lines of like, control the things you can, accept the things you can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and know that the more you try to control everything, the less you're going to have, because it's
Yeah.
like with each time that you lose control, it is just going to be like, a hit to self. In
Yeah.
terms of like, the one more thing I can't do, I can't control anything. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yes, you're right with that mindset. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Number two. What
um,
what do you got?
be present.
Presence. Yeah.
I mean, very specifically, like the idea of, it's if you were living in the past, you're you're constantly thinking about things that you can't control, wish were different, and will inevitably lead to like some type of depression, or like being upset about like, I wish I could have done something different there, just get caught with a case of the should haves. And it's like, well, it's over. Why are you going to try and connect with something beyond just trying to learn from what it was? Or
Yeah.
if you're living in the future and you're focused on, it's like what's going to happen, you're just going to have anxiety over it. It's like you're literally already giving yourself anxiety. You're feeling anxious over something that 100% you can't control.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, that was something that I really loved, from one of the trainings that I was at, where they talked about like the idea of like, what's the most important conversation that you can have? It's the one you're having right now, because it's literally shaping your reality. So why are you worried about one
Mm-hmm.
that happened or one that's going to happen? Like, Dr. Dave, you and I having this conversation right now literally changes the way that I choose to look at the world. And I could do that in every conversation I have.
That's
So,
powerful.
right. So it's, I
That's
mean,
powerful. I love that.
that's a massive one that, and just in general, I mean, just anytime that I am focused on what is happening, it allows for me to build a greater connection with the person that I'm in front of.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, we know those people, like, how it's like if you're sitting with somebody and they're looking at their fucking phone, or they're like checking their watch or whatever, as opposed to like, I, I had a conversation with somebody where we were having such a great conversation that I was just like, can I just hold your hand while we're talking? And this was a person I had just met for maybe 10 minutes. And they were like, yes, like that, I want that too. And I was just like, yeah. I mean, so it's like, there's a, there's a very big difference between like wanting to make a physical a connection with a person while I'm having, while I'm just looking at them and making eye contact and being present with them, versus like the person who's like, you're both just, you're sitting on a bench looking in the same direction. Like one of them's looking at their phone and you're trying to talk. It's just like, it feels so dismissive, and
It
it
really
feels
does. Hmm.
so like you just, you don't feel important. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are so many little ways that we can really present ourselves in a way and be present ourselves in a way to ensure that the other person knows how important their time and space is to us.
I love that. Give me number three.
So curiosity, or like the way I
Curiosity.
like to
Yeah.
put it, and I've heard it before, is like strong beliefs loosely held. So I
Ooh.
mean, really being open to new things, and when you don't understand them, don't it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It means you don't understand them. So like asking lots of really great questions, and being willing to have all of your understanding of things challenged. Like, I mean, it's kind of like a running, I mean, I've heard it in a number of different ways, but like the idea of, if as soon as you think that you know something, you've stopped learning,
Mm.
because it means there's nothing more to learn if you know it. So
Yes.
it's like, I mean, there are very few things that I know. Like, I mean, I'd say like, I mean, even it's like, it's like I know that, you know, that this is the color gray, but it's like to a degree, right? It's like it's how I see gray. So it's not even, it's like even that, if something were to change, like if my eyesight were to go, or if,
Yeah.
like there's so many things that could alter what my understanding of something is, that it's like, and it's also along the lines of, Buddhist meditations around, it's just like the more attachment that I have to something, the more suffering is going to come from it. Where it's
Yeah.
like, why would I hold on to something to be true when I can, and this kind of goes back to the idea of being present with it, is that I can always be curious, that I don't have to be tied to any idea. Like you think about people who are so tied to, and very sadly, it's very often like people are tied to something and it's the opposite that makes them really hate something else or be
Yeah.
really something else. And it's like the amount of pain that comes from that, where it's just like the idea that any one way is the way to do something,
Yeah.
where versus it being there are a million ways to do something. Like that also fell into my category of like my wanting to be right, is like thinking that it's like I know the right way to do a thing. It's like, no, I know a way to do a thing. And by only doing it my way, I'm preventing myself from being curious and seeing how you might do it.
Hmm.
It's like, and even if I see you do it wrong, I just learned another way that it could be done wrong, so I don't do it. Okay. It's still learning. And kind of along those the lines of the, or actually this goes back to the present one. I have an awesome anecdote for it that I'd
Sure.
heard, that was in terms of how to think about things as being present. It's a Buddhist meditation on teachers talking to a student about he has a mug that he always uses, and he's like thinking about telling him, it's like, I love this mug, like it's my favorite mug, and the way that I appreciate it more is that when I think about it, I remember that it's broken and it's always been broken. At some point I'm going to knock it off a table, or somebody may steal it, or like something could happen to it, but it's already broken and it's always been broken. And when I think about that, every moment that it's not, I get to enjoy it for what it is. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be more, it doesn't have to be less, it can be what it is in that moment, and I can be thankful and have gratitude for it. And I'm like, fuck, if I can look at everything through that lens, that like no matter what the thing is, it's it in terms of like the cyclical nature of time, or like time and space and all of it. It's like to think of anything, that any person, anything, any relationship, any moment, it's like it is already over and it has already been, and I just get to enjoy it now.
That's powerful, and I almost want to unpack that, but I want to keep us moving forward.
Yeah.
This because that was amazing. I love that. What's number four?
Number four is be creative. Like
Create.
find ways to be creative. And I think that far too often people get hung up on how they think of creativity. So I mean, they'll look at it, it's just like, well, I don't paint, or I don't sculpt, or I don't
Mhm.
sing, or I don't make music.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, do you garden? Okay, do you make projects in a wood shop?
Hmm.
Do you Are you really great at organizing? Are you someone who, like, do you like to read philosophy and then think of things in different ways? And I
Hmm.
think that when we allow ourselves the grace of understanding our own, because it's creativity is creation. It's just something new. Like
Yeah.
literally, we're as humans, we are constantly creating. And it's, I think, finding ways that allow for us to just connect new ideas. And I think that if you don't have some type of an outlet for that, that you will constantly, I'll just speak for myself. I know I'm constantly stifled if I don't have a way of creating something new, whatever that may
Yeah.
be. Whether that's, I mean, going to a burn, it's like, how do I create, a cool space for and help out with our camp and what that's going to look like?
Hmm.
How do I create, a cool outfit or like costume for a specific night? It's like,
Hmm.
how do I, like, all of those things are really important. And of course, yeah, like if you're somebody who does, like if you've ever picked up guitar and you've strummed a couple of notes, it's like, do you want to do more of that? Because if it makes you happy, do it. And this is the best one, you don't have to be good at the thing to want to do it. Like, I mean, the number of times that I have like stopped myself because I'm like, oh, I suck at that. It's like, but do you enjoy doing it? Who cares if you're terrible at it? Like
Yeah.
being good is not the outcome. The outcome should be the thing. It's almost like I always joke about,
Hmm.
like, I don't know if you ever saw the show Lost, but like, did you ever see it?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, okay, so very quick on it, like the the idea of Lost was like the ending of it. This is how I know I've like definitely grown as a person. When I first watched it, I watched the ending and I'm like, this ending is bullshit. What do you mean it's about the journey? I want answers. Now I look back on it and I'm just like, holy shit, man, it is. It's about the journey and the people we meet and the connections we make and the experiences we have. Like, what a beautiful story. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Sean, you were such an asshole back then.
Dude, I love that. That is that I love the creativity aspect to it because when you bring that creativity and that expression, you are showing up as who you want to be. I mean, that's like literally doing the work of who you are.
Yeah.
Behind me there's a native flute. A friend of mine literally made it and like it gifted me a native flute. And so I'll literally just pick it up 4 or 5 times a day and I'll just play some native flute. And I'm just like,
Oh yeah.
the rest of the office is like, what is happening? I'm like, just over here playing native flute, man. Like that's my lot. It's my gig. I love this.
Awesome.
Okay, so you got me through number 4. Give me the number 5. What is that? What is that last one?
Be playful.
Playful. Yeah.
I mean, I think I mean, so that to me was like probably actually the start of where I recognized that I had a whole bunch of unresolved emotions and things in me was when, I mean, now it's like probably, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, or shit, yeah, like 9, 10 years ago. I read The Little Prince for the first time. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever read that, but which is it's a children's book, but it is primarily about the idea and the importance of like never losing who we are as children,
Yeah.
like recognizing that, you know, being innocent and being playful and having our imaginations and like never losing what that innocence is, or just finding moments to like rekindle what that is in ourselves is, I mean, I think it's Alan Watts who has the a bunch of quotes and does a bunch of talks on the idea of playfulness, where it's just like, the issue that we have as adults is that we look at work as, or we don't look at work as play. Like, I mean, everything is play, and it
Yes.
can be. And it's like, so it's like, do I want to go into my day being miserable about like, oh shit, I need to do all this stuff, as opposed to I get to play around in this space today.
Yeah.
It's like, and so being able to shift mindsets to make things become playful and like, it's the reason, it's like a perfect example. When's the last time that you skipped?
Well, I will tell you this. I have a daughter, and so we
So,
skip
okay, so you
often.
probably skipped. Okay. I mean, but that's what I mean for most people, like
Yeah.
you don't do things like
Right.
that. And it's
Right.
like I would challenge any human on the planet to skip down a sidewalk with people around you and let me know if you start to smile. You let me know if the people around you start to smile,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if it's just out of like, what is happening?
You're
Like,
right.
because it is like we don't live in a world where people like freely express themselves in those ways, except for kids.
Mm,
Like kids still have that. And it's like, so when we have, and like kids are our greatest teachers for that reason. Like they show us so many different ways because they haven't become cynical. They haven't built up walls and they haven't built up, all of the things that are meant to protect us. But really what they're doing is stopping us from being who we were born to be. It's
yes.
like I truly feel like there is just the ingenuity, creativity, and innocence of what kids have. Like we still have it. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
We just bottle it because we're afraid of it because we don't want to look silly. We're like
Yeah.
we're afraid of being embarrassed or what people will think. It's just like, it's the same deal with, it's just like, if people aren't laughing at your goals, they aren't big enough. If people aren't laughing at what you're doing, you're not being silly enough. Like the idea that anything that I do can make somebody laugh because I'm being a fucking goofball. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably like it's probably gonna make me laugh. Like that's the reason I'm doing it. So it's
Yeah.
like being willing to be playful and like literally do stupid shit like roll down a hill. When's the last time you did that? Like, play tag. Like do find ways to embody the childlike love and innocence that we were all born with.
Yeah.
And like I mean, it's a gift that we all have that we can give to ourselves and to each other. And it is something that is so hard for us to do because of the fear of being judged and like the
Yeah.
fear of people looking at it and being like, just it's fear. I mean, almost anything that you're choosing not to do is because of fear. And
Yes.
like, and almost any reason why you're happy is fear based. And
Yes.
so it's like being willing to push through and get to goofy and silly and playful helps an awful lot to get past all those other fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you can manage to skip down like South Congress and like not care about like people laughing at you and feel good about yourself, chances are you're moving past fear in a really positive way.
Absolutely. And now, if you think about like a corporate world, right? Like the main driver for a corporation, and whether it's Meta, whether it's Indeed, whether it's Samsung, Apple, and we're talking about
Whatever.
like, again, capitalist idea, capitalist society. The main
Yep.
driver for them is value. It's bottom line.
Yep.
It's profit margin. And the way they get that is through productivity. They
Mhm.
see, they even though they want to create, like you were mentioning, the meta team or whatever, like there was a name for that.
Mates.
Metamates, yeah. It was super inauthentic, but what they were trying to do is create a sense of camaraderie and so
Mhm.
togetherness. And so what do you think if you brought your method right into a team and you were like, all right guys, we're going to be playful, we're going to be creative, we're going to learn curiosity, we're going to learn presence, we're going to learn surrender, allowance.
Mhm.
What kind of productivity does that get? What kind of value does that get for a team?
So, I mean, I think that it's going to lead to a lot of trust within the team.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if I can watch, so like if I can watch two of my teammates have a like a funny face competition and do it in a way where it's like they both leave it just we're all just laughing our asses off because of how silly and dumb it is. Like
Yeah.
that's going to be a person when they tell me, hey, I just came up with this thing, I think it's a winner, like I really believe in this thing, I'm going to trust that.
Yeah.
Like, or I'm at least going to back them. I'm going to be like, I trust that this person believes this is a winner of an idea. And then same thing with like, being really curious. I mean, like we're going to be asking each other more questions, but we're going to be doing it again. That goes back to the trust piece of like, I'm asking you questions about your idea because I want to understand it, not because I want to shoot it down, not because I'm trying to find reasons that it won't work. Right.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
and same deal with like being playful. It's like, all right, cool. So, I mean, it allows for you to think more in terms of moonshots of like, I mean, who knows if these ideas are going to work, but it's like, let's really do kind of like blue sky whiteboarding where it's like, let's throw any ideas together. Who knows what's going to stick, but it's like, let's not be tethered to what has worked. Like,
Yes.
let's allow ourselves to get outside of what that space is and to like, I mean, the trite think outside the box, but it's just like, and it's you're writing on a whiteboard and somebody's like, but I want to bring in a 64 pack of Crayolas and some construction paper. Please do that. Please do exactly that. And I'll bring in some
Yeah.
paste. I'll bring in some scissors. Like literally, why are we only putting things together or working in ways that are what are in front of us? Like
Yes.
things don't change if nothing changes and we're doing it the same way. So why wouldn't you want to think of new ways to do shit?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if it's just to change a perspective on things and you come to the same conclusion, it's like, well, we just triangulated in a bunch of different ways. So now we're that much sure about what our idea is.
Yeah.
Um, and then in terms of, surrender and presence, it's like, well, I mean, presence could be something where it's like, I mean, I love group meditation, so it's like, it literally could be something as simple that before a meeting, it's just like, let's do 1 minute of breath work just to be here in this room together and commit to that.
Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, it literally could be something that simple, or just making sure that there's a level of accountability where it's just like, hey, in our meetings, phones down. Like, I don't care what's going on, like in anything else, unless you have an emergency that you express. Our focus is that if we're going to waste our time in a meeting, then we are going to make sure we're not wasting each other's time in this meeting. So it's
Yeah.
like, and then with surrender, it's like, it's about getting to yes, not how often can we say no or push things away. So it's like, how do we work together to build up one another's ideas, thoughts, or kinds of projects, whatever it is, and allow for it to be something that can truly be, or a perfect example would be like around like change management. It's like, if we're trying to adopt a new way of doing something, let's like literally it's lean in all in. Like don't have it be something where I'm going to half-ass parts of this. It's like, because that's not fully committing.
Yep.
Whether it's this new way of being, whether it's something that's a new process or policy or procedure, whether it's just an adoption of a new tool. I mean, whatever it is, but it's like, if you can commit to not half-assing things, I mean, that's what, and that one is amazing to me. Like the number of times where I have been like, oh yeah, I tried this and it didn't work. If someone follows that up, and very few people do, they'll be like, well, did you fully commit to it or did you just kind of do it for a little while? And it's like, did you have to ask? Because you know the answer. You know I didn't
Yes.
fully commit, because if I did, chances are it probably would have worked. It's like, and I feel that way about like whether it's a workout regimen or a diet or like pieces of manifestation or positive, and like I mean there are so many things that no one goes all in on, that they just accept doesn't work, but they've never actually tried, but they've already written the story that it doesn't work, so it's already over for themselves. So it's
Yeah.
like if you can get to that place of fully committing to something and fully surrendering, like that is a massive change for a workplace environment.
That has a huge change. How you were mentioning, it's safe, it's creating safety to fail,
Yep.
and opening themselves up. Now here's the cool thing: we just Mr. Miyagi this. We're gonna bring this full circle. I'm gonna
Mhm.
just, for context, I'm just gonna call this the authentic leadership formula. That's just kind of what it. I'm just gonna throw it out there. You can run with it if you want. You can change the name.
Okay.
I don't care. But we're just gonna call this the authentic leadership formula. Now
Okay.
here's the cool thing: anybody that wants to step into your container, whatever individual you want to speak to, whether it is corporate leaders, whether it's just, individuals off the street, whether it's entrepreneurs, whether it's, women, men, however you want to show up, you get to then understand their psyche and give them exactly what they want by helping them know the stakes of what will it cost if they don't use the authentic leadership formula. That's why I asked you the question, like, what kind of productivity would they get? What kind of value? And you can already identify, it's like, well, if you don't use the authentic leadership formula, your teams won't trust each other, they won't feel safe to fail, they'll lose productivity, ideas will be scrapped, that you won't be moving forward, the bottom line won't increase, right? So you can speak to that very clearly because you know that the value of something is simple. It's like emotional intelligence, and selling emotional intelligence isn't actually selling that. It's selling, hey, we're going to make you more money because your team went through this, or your leadership team went through this program. And maybe that program could be a weekend seminar. It could be like a 6 week in person. It could be a 1 day intensive. It could be anything. You can bring that to the table. Now, here's the cool thing is you already identified what are the mindsets that keep you stuck. What's the cost of those mindsets? You identified the 5 steps of creating an authentic leadership formula. Well, again, I love it. So now in your transition, right, when you're looking at, hey, I'm stepping into a new role. I don't know what that kind of looks like. I don't know if I'm going to be going back into the corporate world to find a job. You could legit step into the world with 5 pieces of paper, one that has surrender, one that has presence, one that has curiosity, one that has creativity, and then the last one having playfulness, and a few exercises on that, and you have a program, you have a legit company. And that's the fun part. Like, you don't need a piece of paper, like, you've lived it, you know exactly what you're talking about, and you just identified exactly what that looks like. So I love it, man. I'm excited for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was a kind of a
That's a
Mr.
pretty solid,
Miyagi.
facilitation there, Dave.
I love it. I love it, man. It's one of my favorite things is to help people know what they already, like, the value that they already have. It's the irony of the deep work that I've done. I felt so worthless. Like, I had to
Mhm.
go find my
Yep.
own worthlessness, that I know how to extract some worth. I know how to extract some value. And that's the fun gig, man. So this
Oh,
was
yeah.
super fun practice. So here's the cool thing, man. It's like you get to bring this into the world, and you already know what it looks like. You already know the value it brings. And if you just speak to the value, whether you're talking with an HR or an actual leadership, or you just get a bunch of friends in a room, and then you get some testimonials and they can speak to how fucking badass it is. That's the fun part, man. That's where you can start. You can grow a true company with that. And the sky's the limit, my friend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. This is
This was
good.
awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So now Sean is offering the authentic leadership formula. Reach out to Sean, which is legit, man. So I'll yeah, if you're comfortable with it, I'll rep you. You know what you got going on.
Yeah. So I mean, right now the the main things that I've been doing are making, content specific to stuff, kind of what we've been talking about. It's like in the effort to not be an imposter, and but to be able to speak to the things that I'm doing. I'm kind of coining myself as a human connection enthusiast, because that is
Yeah.
100% accurate.
Yeah.
And I love just people being able to talk about their experiences and how they connect.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that through my different handles on social. So I have it's just at consentences, or you can go to the website, which is just consentences.com. So consent sentences, just kind of
Perfect.
smashed together.
I love it. Yeah,
And
and we'll link it up in the show notes so people can find you.
thank you.
And sounds like it's on Instagram, and are you on the
Yeah,
TikTok and the whole nine?
Yep. TikTok and Instagram are
Perfect.
and Facebook are the primary ones. Starting to
Cool.
get some stuff on YouTube, and and starting to book podcast guests again. So we're going to be getting back to that too. So
Love it.
just just talking about people, and talking about feelings and vulnerability, and just where we can find love in this world for each other.
I love it, man. And you're going to be speaking on surrender, presence, curiosity, creativity, and playfulness.
Hell
That's it.
yeah.
I love it, my friend. Well, thank you again, man. I mean, this has been really helpful, I know, for anyone listening, and for the guys out there, and even for the gals. Reach out to Sean if you are looking to dive deeper into authentic expression, man. I mean, you're a good dude, and you're gonna do some great things for the world.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unbreakable Man podcast. If you found this episode valuable, then go ahead and leave a 5-star review explaining how this podcast has helped you so more people can find it. If you want to be a part of the Brotherhood, then click the link in the description below. You can also check out the Unbreakable Man experience if you're ready to face a deeper challenge and change your life for the better in just 3 days. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate you. And as always, stay unbreakable.